Hey, welcome back to the Big Ranch Show. As always, thank you for joining me. If you could, hit the subscribe button down below and let's get right to it. Now, there's been a lot of companies leaving the NRA, a lot of sponsorships and stuff pulling out, from different airlines to credit card options. And now Bank of America is getting in on not doing business with some gun manufacturers and stuff. A bunch of stuff's been going on since that shooting last week or so, back on the 14th in Parkland, Florida. There's been a lot going on, a lot of stuff. These kids are demanding change. And that's what my last video was. One of my last videos on the subject was about the kids demanding change. And I gave you a plan, my suggestion anyway, on how to secure our schools immediately. That way our schools are secure while we try to figure out what we can do to stem the tide of gun violence in America. That's what the video that I put out over this topic was yesterday. But today I want to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about actual policy. Actual things we could do after our schools have been secured. And I'll tell you right now, I do not support teachers having to be armed because it's going to create a bigger problem for law enforcement. If they come busting into the school trying to get a shooter and they see somebody with a gun, they're liable to shoot a teacher who happens to be trying to protect their students. I think uniformed, armed people would do a better job of being able to inform the police what is going on and be able to keep everybody safe. And I think we can do that via hiring jobless veterans to secure our schools. I think a lot of them would probably take you up on the offer to protect our schools. And I think that'd be a great idea. But this is what I want to do in this video is discuss some ideas maybe on how to stem the tide of gun violence, if possible at all. As well, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think on the subject matter of gun policy and gun laws and gun regulations here in the U.S. Let me know what you think and try to keep it civil. I'm just trying to put out a few ideas. If you want to bring your hate, that's fine. Ain't nobody going to listen to it. But this is just a few ideas that I have. First off, I think we should require mental evaluations for guns. I don't think you should be able to just walk into a gun store, and buy a gun just because you have no criminal history when you have a huge history of mental illness. Mental illness is a big cause of these shootings. A lot of people that do these shootings do have mental illnesses. And we miss a lot of this. We miss a lot of signs because this isn't in the background checks. This isn't required in a background check. Somebody that's, really threatening to harm people because of their mental illness can't really do anything about it. You can't stop them from buying a gun right now. There's no law against it. Now, there are 2 or 3 other states in this country that, according to the town hall that CNN did the other day, where this person can be at least temporarily prevented from buying a gun if people believe that this person is a threat to themselves or somebody else. I forget exactly what they call it, but you can have them prevented from getting a gun for a temporary period of time while they go through their due process to find out if this person is actually having a mental episode or whatever, whether or not they would harm somebody or themselves. That's one thing we can do. I think that's some low-lying fruit right there. I think you could easily pick that off the tree and put that in any kind of gun legislation, gun policy going forward. That's one. Another thing is something that a friend of mine on Facebook mentioned, which I think is actually possibly a really good idea. Some of you will not want to hear it, and apparently he's running into some resistance within his own crowd of people not wanting to hear it and things like that. But the thought is, how about we don't seal records for minors, especially when it has to do with violent crime or mental illnesses? Because a lot of times when there's a severe mental illness as a child or a teenager, those things are just ignored once you turn 18. The records are sealed, no one gets to know that. Maybe that information should be available in a background check. If you were, violently mentally ill as a kid, maybe, just maybe, you should be prevented from having a gun until you prove otherwise, through mental evaluation or whatever. But it brings up a valid point that what you did as a teenager could be very valid it's still very valid when you're 18 years old. When you're 16 years old and you have a mental breakdown of some sort, or have some kind of mental episode, and then on your 18th birthday you run out and buy an AR-15 or an AK-47 or even a handgun for that matter, it doesn't mean just because you're 2 years older that everything is resolved. Or hell, make it even more interesting. It happens when you're 17, right before your 18th birthday. The year before your 18th birthday, and it's sealed. In some states, maybe it wouldn't be. In some states, it would be. But maybe it shouldn't be. This guy was 19 years old, known for having mental illness, known for having the cops called over and over and over again. 39 times, I believe the number was, that the cops were called to his house before his mother passed away. All because of his behavior. Another idea, and it's one that I believe they are working on now, and that's to make sure that all states and state agencies and federal agencies and all branches of the military are talking together to guarantee the most legitimate and most timely processing of information when somebody has done something that should keep them from having a gun. They're convicted, of child abuse. They're convicted of spousal abuse, or they've been court-martialed for violently harming their child, as is the case in the Sutherland, Texas shooting. That's another thing we can do. Make sure all the information that is given to the background checks is correct and put there in a timely manner. That way somebody can't easily run off and buy a gun and just be seconds early enough to get it. Or days early enough. I believe we should expand the waiting time to be able to purchase a firearm. I'm not saying that an extended waiting time would have prevented the last shooting. We know he bought the gun about a year ago. But it could have prevented other shootings. Because there are shootings where people buy a firearm and immediately go and shoot somebody as soon as they get their gun. Maybe the cooling off period needs to be a little longer than three days to a week or whatever it is, and whatever and everything. I'm not exactly sure exactly how long it is, but maybe we should aim towards 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You shouldn't have to need a gun that badly, that quickly. Now, that's going to run into some resistance, I know. Many of you aren't going to support that idea. It's just a thought. You can hate me for it all you want, or you can support me for it. I don't care. At the end of the day, I just want to put out a voice, have my let my voice be heard, and let people know that there are options out there. There are things we can do to limit gun violence in this country. And yes, I do support heavy regulations on assault rifles. I believe an outright ban of assault rifles for civilian use is a good idea. But, as Marco Rubio put it in that town hall the other day, there are lots of other guns that work in much the same way as an AR-15 or an AK-47. They have the same firing abilities. But I think you just have to be very specific on what you do. You got to say these guns are not going to be easily obtainable. And as many people have told me, and as Marco Rubio put it the other day, the only difference between somebody calling something based on the current law that they're trying to work on, that people have been working on, between an assault rifle and these other weapons that are just like them, is the addition of the extra grip, the extra handle grip there. And if that's the case, then we need to work on that. We need to get together as a country and debate the issues. We need to sit down and have an actual discussion about it. We should not allow the NRA to block us from having these discussions. I don't believe it's that hard of an issue. I don't think we're that far apart. I don't believe anybody really thinks that somebody with a severe mental illness that is known to be mentally ill should have a gun. I don't believe most people would think that somebody would deserve to have a gun if they've been violent to their family. I don't think anybody could. It's hard to disagree with that. Now, what we have to do, though, is we have to do this on both sides. I'm coming from the left, sure. But I also need to be able to listen to you. The folks on the left need to be able to listen to the folks on the right. And the folks on the right need to be able to listen without any problems to those of us on the left. It goes both ways. I've seen people on the left shut people down in the gun debate. Just say, screw you. It doesn't matter. I want all guns gone. And that's not what I want. Personally, I don't think banning all guns is the solution. Because I know lots of people that like to hunt. It's how they feed their families, a lot of them. A lot of people don't go to the grocery store for their meat. They hunt. They hunt for their meat. And maybe that's because, maybe it's me coming from Texas. Maybe that's, I'm not a hunter myself. I'm not one to go hunting. But I really do enjoy when people bring me food back when they've been hunting. There's nothing better than fresh meat. Just not. And so I don't think we should be scrapping everyone's gun rights. I don't think that's the way to go. I'm not saying end the Second Amendment or change the way it's been read. I don't care about that right now. All I care about is putting out some ideas on things we could do, some low-hanging fruit that we could pick off the tree and get in a bill somewhere that might save one life. If you saved one life, you've at least done something. And all I can tell the establishment is this: if you don't make changes, if you don't get out of the pockets or get the NRA out of your pockets, those kids, those ones that you're writing off right now, the ones that many of you are laughing at, Republican or Democrat, they're going to take you down. They're going to vote you out of office. And people are like, oh, some of them are too young to vote. Well, guess what? You got a lot of kids across this country turning voting age right now. And they will vote in the 2018 election. They will vote in the 2020 election. So if you want to save your political careers, I suggest you get busy. I suggest you attempt to make changes to gun laws. That way, we can protect our citizenry. We can protect the students of America. On college campuses, elementary schools, high schools, you name it. Where we can protect people when they go to a club. You shouldn't have to look over your back in America to make sure that you're not being shot at, or that you're not being about to be gunned down. You shouldn't have to go. Kids should not have to go to school worried about whether or not they're going to go back home alive because some crazy ass shooter walks in their school. So I'm not asking for much. I'm just asking for a little bit of action. You've done nothing. None of you. Republican, Democrat, you've done nothing. But I'll make you this pledge right now. To anyone in our Congress, Senate, House, state legislatures, whatever, I pledge to you right now that if I find out that anyone that I am planning to vote for has taken money from the NRA or has not disavowed money they've taken from the NRA in the past, then I will not vote for them. No person that receives money from the NRA will get a vote from me. And I hope for a lot of you, I hope you do the same thing. Do your research. Find out who's taken money from the NRA as of late. If they're not disavowing that money and they're not saying they're going to fight for your rights, fight for your right to be alive, vote them out. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. Now, there aren't many Democrats taking money from the NRA, since Sandy Hook. There's a few. But most aren't. But I can guarantee you right now that even if my favorite candidate ever, Bernie Sanders, was to come out and all of a sudden be getting money from the NRA, I would not vote for Bernie Sanders. Unless he went on national television and disavowed the money and either sent it to a charity that helps people that are victims of gun crime, or he sends it back to them. I will not support any candidate that supports the NRA, and I hope you don't either. Now, that's just my opinion. That's all this is. This whole video is just nothing but my opinion. So please, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think on gun policy. What do you think our policy should be? What changes, if any, do you think there should be? And then maybe if I find some good comments, maybe we can talk about that in another video next week. Because I would love to get some good constructive comments. So please try. Please try to leave a comment, with some good idea, at least a good idea. I'm not looking for attacks here on anybody. I don't want to see any of that. I just want good, concrete ideas on what we could do to stem the tide when it comes to gun violence in America. That's it, and that's all. Anyhow, y'all have a great day. I'll see you down the road. And God bless America.